right. Hello, hello.
Dr. Amir.
Dr. Amir Rashidian with Pastor R. Dallas Greene, and I'm going to ask Pastor R. to introduce our lovely guest today.
Well, we are honored to have with us today is my lovely wife, Debbie Greene, and she is an ESL teacher and will be very helpful to us in the topic of immigration.
Yeah, we kind of thought we would, as we have in the past, mix in some of the current events that are going on with biblical themes and lessons that we get to learn. So let's start with the word, I guess.
There couldn't be a hotter topic than immigration.
I agree.
It's on everybody's mind now as to the pathway to citizenship for the 11 million or so illegal immigrants in our country, and the Dreamers and the banning of the Dreamers Act. So I thought we would begin with sort of a biblical understanding of immigration.
Perfect.
So we turn back to the book of Genesis in chapter 1. We're told that human beings are made in the image of God. And that's a beautiful thing. That means each person has infinite value in God's sight and has unlimited potential. That truth reminds us that the question of immigration is essentially about people made in the image of God with great potential. So the question we need to ask is, do our immigration laws honor the worth of immigrants as human beings? Do our laws facilitate the realization of their great potential for our country? The question I think we need to ask ourselves is, how are the immigrants contributing to the well-being of America? I mean, we all came from somewhere, unless we're a Native American. Debbie's family came over from Norway. We've been to Bergen, Norway, where her family immigrated in 1911. Her grandfather came with her grandmother. You've immigrated from another country.
That's right.
And become an American citizen. So I think each one is making a contribution to America. So do we find migration in the Bible?
Yeah.
Is there any migration happening in the Bible? We could say the history of humanity is the history of migration.
Yeah, that's right.
Back in the Old Testament, you have Abraham, who migrated from the Ur of the Chaldees into the Promised Land,
Right.
he had never seen before.
Right.
And people migrated for reasons very similar to reasons people migrate today. For instance, when Abraham came to the Promised Land, there was a famine, and he migrated over to Egypt.
Right.
So he left a land to find a land where there was food.
Right.
Daniel, for instance, he migrated to Babylon because of war. His nation was conquered, and he was exiled to Babylon.
Right.
So you have a migration of Daniel there. So when Daniel was in Babylon, he contributed to the well-being of that land.
Right.
So an immigrant in a foreign land can make a great contribution to them. And migration is central to the Christianite concept of being a pilgrim or an alien or a foreigner in this world.
Right.
We're told that we are all sojourners or strangers in a strange land. And Christians are migrants on this earth. We serve another king, and we're citizens of a greater kingdom.
That's right.
The kingdom of God. And that suggests that the more we understand about migration, the more we understand about our faith.
Yes.
As to the fact that we're all immigrants.
True.
So the Old Testament speaks to the fact of how we're to treat immigrants. In the Old Testament, we see that foreigners were to have rest from their work like everyone else. The citizens and the foreigners were both to work 6 days and rest on the Sabbath.
Great.
We also know that the foreigners were to be given a fair wage, paid on time, not to be exploited, not to be taken advantage of. And the law courts were to be fair to those outsiders and impartial. That is to say, the judges were not to take bribes or to speak favorably to one or the other. Even more impressive was to allow foreigners to participate in worship. That the reason that Israel had open borders with sojourners and foreigners coming was that they could come to know the greatness of our God. That the fields themselves would not be cut down to the corners, that the corners would be left unharvested, allowing the foreigners to have something to eat, that they would glean from the fields. We see that with the case of Ruth and
That's right.
Naomi.
Yeah.
That when Ruth came, she began to glean in the field of Boaz.
Right.
And that provided for her family because she was a sojourner from Moab
That's
into
right.
the land of Israel. So they experienced the goodness of God. That the foreigners came, experienced the goodness of God in that land. So I wanted to read a passage from Deuteronomy that speaks to this. It says about our great God, mighty and awesome, who shows no partiality
Mm.
and accepts no bribes. He loves all mankind. He says he defends the cause of the fatherless and the widow, and he loves the alien.
Huh.
Our great God loves
Right.
aliens.
Right.
And we're told to show hospitality because sometimes we've entertained angels.
Right.
To
That's
show
right.
hospitality to strangers because we've entertained angels. Then it says, and you are to love those who are aliens, for you yourselves were aliens in Egypt.
That's right.
So one of the reasons why we maybe look with disdain upon aliens is because we forget that we came from somewhere.
That's right.
And God showed his goodness to us.
That's right.
And if we are like our God, then our love for aliens should be strong. We should open
Yeah.
our hearts to them.
Right.
Because God has given to us homes,
Right.
and they need a home.
Yeah.
God has given to us food,
Exactly.
and they will need food.
Yes.
God's given to us jobs, and they will need jobs.
Right.
We've learned this language, and so someone needs to teach them the language.
Yes.
Debbie, could you help us understand how the immigrant community is contributing to the American society?
Immigrants really do support our social systems, and I think people forget how important they are and how much we need them. Statistics are even proving that in the future we're not going to have enough support system for the elderly, and the immigrants who are coming in, or the foreign-born, the same, meaning the same, foreign-born or immigrants, are coming in and working in professions that are helping the elderly and helping, especially in the healthcare. We have, the statistics are saying that immigrants are 13% of the US population, but 28% of the physicians and the surgeons are 28% are immigrants.
Wow.
We have 40% in the medical scientists.
Wow.
22% are in the nursing field, 15% are nurses,
Wow.
22% psychiatric. We have so many immigrants who are giving so much to us in helping us. And we always think, oh, they're taking from us. They are not. They're working so hard and they're giving so much to us. We have so much value from our immigrants.
Yeah, we often think that if there's going to be landscaping, it's going to be done by somebody, right, who's willing to get out of the hot sun and do the landscaping work. And so much of that's now being done by the immigrant community, doing jobs that maybe Americans wouldn't take.
Right.
A friend of mine has a fencing company. He says the only people who are willing to work 12 hours a day putting in fence are immigrants that show up early for work hard all day long, not even taking a break, and will stay extra hours.
Wow.
And our immigrants create jobs. We know that they're entrepreneurs. They have begun many big companies we know, like Google and Pfizer and Budweiser and TJ Maxx and General Electric,
Wow.
Garmin,
Oh,
eBay.
wow.
These are all started companies by immigrants, by foreign-born people who have come here and have shared with us the wealth of their knowledge. DuPont, PayPal. Those are not things that we think about. Levi's. Those
Wow.
are immigrants who have had a dream and they've come here and their dream and they've worked so hard to make their dream happen.
That's interesting. I didn't realize there were that many companies. I was 11 when I came to America. So I remember being in Los Angeles with 2 suitcases because the airlines actually lost our 3rd suitcase.
Oh.
So you mentioned Levi's, all the jeans were in that one.
Yeah.
All the clothes on your back.
That's right. We showed, it was just my mother and I, and that was it. And 2 suitcases, and no one looked like us, and no one sounded like us, and no one talked like us. And we had trouble communicating, and I remember being on a bus in Los Angeles. My mother and I were standing, holding on to the pole, and being 11, I don't really remember where we were going or what we were doing, and Mom had to figure out how to set up a bank account or how to get a social security card or how to apply for a job or any of that, but I'm just tagging along, but I remember being scared because someone was telling me something on that bus, but all he was saying was, take my seat, come sit down, I'll stand.
He was sharing a seat.
I couldn't understand what he was saying.
Yeah.
And but something as simple as that can be terrifying for
Yes.
for an immigrant. And then
And so we see a lot of immigrants now that are looking in the rearview mirror, hoping that the police will not pull them over because they fear being deported. And I'm sure that you dealt with some of that yourself, of
Yeah.
like the uncertainty of knowing that you
Right.
could stay here.
yeah.
So can you tell us why your family immigrated into America?
Yeah, so I'm from Iran, and Iran was very prosperous and beautiful when I was born. And for the first 5 years of my life, it was amazing. But then there was the revolution. There was fighting in the streets, and we actually lived in a small town up north by the Caspian Sea. It was a vacation spot, so nothing really touched us. But after the revolution, it became the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the minute the revolution happened, Saddam Hussein said, they don't have an organized military and there's no government there, so let's attack. Because they wanted the land around the Persian Gulf, which was oil rich. And so when they attacked, there was bombing in the bigger cities in Iran. And again, it didn't touch us very much, although I did experience a little bit of it. What happened was after 2 years, there was, we were a vacation area. There was this beautiful park in the center of town. Beautiful park. Every day after dinner, Mom, Dad, myself, and kids from the neighborhood, we go for walks after dinner. That was tradition. And where did you go for a walk? Was the beautiful park that was in the center of our town. Well, they walled it off, put barbed wire over it, and turned it into a POW camp. So even this small town up north, which is where people go for vacation, got affected by the war finally. And the POWs, the Iraqi POWs, would escape every few weeks. And then bullets would fly through the streets, and all the kids, we'd be playing soccer in our neighborhood, and we had to run inside, find a wall, hide behind it until the shooting would stop. The scariest part wasn't the bullets flying, it was actually the knock on the door, because if there was a knock on your door, you had to open the door.
Yeah.
Because if it was the Iranian soldiers searching for the escaped POW, they would put you in prison if you didn't open the door.
Okay.
So you had to open the door. But what if it was the Iraqi soldier who wants to take you hostage knocking on the door? You don't know who it is, you open the door. And luckily every time there was knocks on our door, it was our own soldiers coming in with guns, searching the place. But it's still very, very terrifying. So Dad wanted me to have an opportunity for a better education. And I already had some half-brothers and a half-sister who lived in the U.S. at the time. So I was the only one over there, and he said, well, I want to give you the same opportunity, and that's why we packed up our bags and moved out here.
I'm sure you hear, Debbie, in the classroom stories of people leaving their countries because of unsafe conditions. Can you speak to that a little bit, of some of the stories you're hearing of people seeking asylum in our country?
Similar to Dr. Amir, many of our immigrants today are leaving countries that are riddled with gang violence and all kinds of war. It's very unsafe, some of these countries. And these students that I have taught, some of them have traveled thousands of miles to get here by foot or by truck, or they have been crammed in places trying to find a safe place to raise their family, to give their family an opportunity to live, to survive, and not be mowed down by the gangs or plowed down by the drug cartels that are there. Some of them have even come in from our South American countries or our African countries where the government has, just like yours, there was a big change of government and it wasn't safe for them to stay. And the United States has always been a safe haven, and it is sad to me to see how much my peers and some of my friends or some of the people I live with aren't as welcoming and understanding that we all came from other lands and
Well, it
other
sounds to
shores.
me like, especially the media is making it sound like it's a lot of criminals that come here. And the crime rates are going up because of that. So then I wonder what the stats are on that. I mean, what percentage of the robberies and murders and assault? What percentage of that are immigrants, and what percentage of the prison population are immigrants? That would be interesting.
Well, we know that, there are gangs in places like El Salvador, like MS-13,
Mhm.
that come into our country. But, I think that's exactly the people we want to send back to their countries.
Mhm.
Because as you look at the example in Scripture of Israel, the people coming in would have to obey the laws and the customs and learn the language.
Exactly.
And so if a person doesn't want to abide by the laws,
Right.
then they're not welcome here.
Right.
They need to be incarcerated and then deported.
Exactly.
But the ones who are simply, driving in their cars with their
Right.
families and being,
Mhm.
pulled over for
Right.
trivial reasons, it seems like it's an overreach of,
Yeah. Yeah.
these.
I agree. There were times while we were here where, from a legal standpoint, we had to apply for certain things. And we were terrified, what if they don't extend our visa to stay? What if they deny our green card, even though we qualify and everything else, Those are terrifying times. And then to actually get your green card, they ask you to leave the country. So we had to leave the U.S. We'd been living here for a few years. We had to leave and go to Europe. I think we were in, we did 2 different cities because one of them denied us, and then we had an attorney get us back into the country. And then the second one, so we were in Rome, in Italy, or it might have been Naples, and we went to the U.S. Embassy there. And we said, well, we qualified for a green card, but they say leave the country because if you get denied, they don't want you to come back in. And so it's awfully terrifying when you leave the country because this is now your new home, and you don't have anywhere else to go. So we went to Naples and went to the embassy, and they said, no, we're not going to give you a green card. So then, but we had already had the attorney set up, and they said, no, I'll get you back in the country. Here's a 1-year visa. So within a year, they sent us back out of the country. This time we went to London. We went to the U.S. Embassy, and they stamped us and gave us the green card. Now we were permanent residents and had that green card. It's very terrifying.
Yes.
And we're glad to have followed the rules and done it that way. That there's a reason for all of that. But it's the other stuff that makes it difficult. Listening to you read those regulations and laws on how we need to treat immigrants made me think, wow, there must have been so many then.
Yes.
Not only that, God was seeing today and going, you know what, I'm going to have this permanently documented.
Yes.
So forever and ever people can reference this book
Yes.
and know exactly how to handle situations like that.
Yes.
Just like everything else we've looked in the book. It's been so wise and so had so much foresight into our life today. We read something that was written thousands of years ago and we go, they could have written this to us yesterday. And it applies.
So Solomon, who was the wisest man who ever lived, he numbered the foreigners in his country. There was 153,000 foreigners. And he gave them jobs in the building of the temple, which is to say that they were numbered, but they contributed to the well-being of the nation. And the government played a role in hiring them for the benefit of all.
Right.
So I think there is, as you say in the scripture, the relevancy of how government can be a positive force,
Yeah.
helping the immigrants to settle in and contribute.
Oh, yeah.
And according to the ILC, immigrants do pay taxes, a lot of taxes. And I have down that they have paid $140 billion annually in federal, state, and local taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And even undocumented immigrants, they use the ITINS to pay an estimated $11 billion per year. That is significant. I think a lot of people say, well, they're not paying taxes, and they're taking. The immigrants are not taking from our social.
That's true.
Social welfare, they are giving to it, and they do not take from our coffers, they are giving to us, and I see the value of my being with people from these different countries. They give me so much more than I even give them.
Well, Well, I look at like Dr. Amir, how he contributes to the well-being of our community.
Yes.
But he has a great heart for things like Habitat for Humanity,
Mm.
you know, making sure that people have housing.
Right.
Because I think there was a time when, you know, your housing was uncertain here.
Yeah.
And your status was uncertain.
Exactly.
And now God's giving you a home, and you want to see a home for others.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we like, for our practical purposes, we were homeless in Los Angeles, and a family said, "Come stay with us for a few days until you figure out where you're going to be." But that family had a teenage son who would come in the middle of the night with a bat and break things, and you know, threaten us. So we moved out of there, and we shared another apartment with another family, and it was a 2-bedroom apartment. There was 5 of us living and 6 of us living in that one 2-bedroom apartment, and that was for a year. But another immigrant contacted my dad and said, "Hey, listen, I know your family's over in Los Angeles. I want to buy a house, and it's going to be a small town house. It's going to be on the East Coast. I want you to buy it from me after I buy it. You won't have to pay any interest. Make payments on it what you can afford, and live in it until it's paid off." What a gift that was. So this is another immigrant, an angel, who happened to be a OBGYN, and he was doing well, and he said, "Here, I'll write a check, buy a small house for you, and you pay me back." Which is what Habitat for Humanity does, incidentally, is they don't gift anybody a house. They say, "Here's a very low interest or a no interest loan, and you pay what you can afford." But because we don't want to do handouts, we want to do a hand up. Now that allowed us to move into our own house, feel good about ourselves because we're making mortgage payments. And then, you know, I was able to go to school and do everything else.
You are a success story because people open their hands and open their arms to
Exactly.
you. And you wanted to become part of this country.
Right.
And the country wanted you. Someone stepped in, and the angels, that's the thing that we know. The people that are giving and helping us to settle the foreign-born or the immigrants.
I think nobody really wants to leave their home. So you know, yeah, and the thing is, when you hear about America in other countries, they say, "Oh, this is heaven. America is heaven. It's amazing and it's incredible and it has so many things." And you know what? The minute you set foot on the soil of America, you're going to become successful because it's the land of opportunity. There's opportunity everywhere, and it's a little sobering when you first get here, because you go, "Wow, it's actually like it's just a place, but it's not like very different than most other places."
Right.
You really miss home. You wish you had your own house. You wish you had your friends. You wish you were still, as bad as it was, you want to go back. Now, I always like to throw something about health when we do our talks here, and this is something that, you know, obviously I don't know if a lot of research has been done on this, but I've read articles that talk about how you're healthiest when you're on your own longitude. So for me, technically my body works better when I'm on the other side of the planet than when I'm here. So, which is neat because I go back and visit, and I take my whole family just because I want everybody to know where we came from, and you know, I do feel I feel like things are I sleep a little better and my body's a little healthier when I'm in the town and area where I was born and lived the first 11 years of my life. So it's kind of, you know, so that our immigrants, part of what we need to realize is they actually would prefer to be in their own home, speaking their own language, with their own culture, and eating their own food.
Saffron rice is pretty nice, though.
Oh yeah, I'm glad we brought that with us.
Makes me happy.
Exactly. Absolutely. It's you know, something else that makes we need to understand is when we see immigrants, and we know that they're hard workers, it's because they kind of made that commitment up front. Before, like we landed here, my mother literally had $500 in her pocket, and she said, "Well, I'm gonna try not to spend this." So what do? She found a way to be a nanny for a family of, the husband and wife were both doctors, working all day. She took care of their little girl,
And then on weekends, Mom and I used to go walk through neighborhoods with flyers that we had made with magic markers that said, "We'll clean your house for $50." And we'd go to these neighborhoods and just put it on doors, and they would call us, and then we'd grab, the vacuum cleaner and the supplies and go clean their house. So now I'll have to admit, I don't think we paid tax on the house cleaning money, but we were providing a service. And the minute we were, citizens, and then that changed. But it was, what we wanted to do was contribute and work, and it's not like you rarely see new immigrants on the street corner begging.
No, you don't.
They figure out how to work, and they will say, "I want to do whatever
Yeah.
it takes." We were willing to clean toilets.
And many of your students that have 2 and 3 jobs, right? They come to your
Yes.
class having worked all day long with bloodshot eyes.
And they study hard, and these adult immigrants are trying so hard to just get by and just make it, and they are contributing. They're doing the jobs that so many people do not want to do. American-born people do not want to do, and they are willing to do it.
I wish we could get some of that enthusiasm and motivation for our youth,
Yes.
because part of, and this is going to be a topic for another day, because we are out of time, but
Yeah.
I'd love to maybe figure out, and maybe we can brainstorm on this, is how do I teach my 3 sons that same kind of work ethic without having them go through the pain that we had to go through.
Well, the Bible teaches that if a man will not work, neither shall he eat. So the greatest motivation to work is I need to eat.
That's right.
So if I don't have something to eat, then I need to have a job in order to pay for it. If I don't
Yes.
have a place, I need to work in order to provide for it. So I need to have sort of that which I work for.
Yes.
There has to be a need.
Right. So they're coming here and they're working and they're serving and they're helping. They're willing to do a whole lot. And we should be more welcoming to them and obey the word and obey our Lord God.
Love the immigrants.
Absolutely.
Like God loves them.
And I want to say, they're coming here. Can we share the love of God with them?
Yes.
As opposed to my going to those countries and being a missionary, they're
Yeah.
coming to me, and I can be a missionary in my own home.
Yes.
So this is such a blessing.
So if anybody comes to our country, they either come as a believer or as not a believer. If they're a believer, that's my brother, that's my
Yes.
sister.
Yeah.
If they're not a believer, they're my mission field. I get
Yes.
to love them into the kingdom.
Exactly.
So in either case, we get a chance to love these people God sent to us.
Very nice.
We'll stop, but next time?
I'd love to talk about that next time. How do we use the mission field in our backyard?
Okay.
All right. Take care, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Ran along.